Audio check, 1 2 1 2 1 2 3.
Hats off. Hello, everyone. Okay, a very warm welcome to the second plenary of the conference, which has been organized in collaboration with Modern Law Review, and CARA, the Council for At-Risk Academics. I'm Smitha Keria. I'm the Vice Chair of the SLSA, and I also lead SLSA's internationalization activities. I'm delighted to be chairing this panel, which will combine current perspectives from academics at risk who've moved to work in British law schools from Afghanistan and Ukraine, along with offering a broader view on the contribution of migrant scholars to the socio-legal field. Before I introduce you to our panelists, I'd like to make 3 introductory points. First, the SLSA is incredibly grateful to Modern Law Review for sponsoring this plenary. The founding and early development of the Modern Law Review was significantly influenced by migrant German Jewish scholars, and this influence is particularly relevant to us as socio-legal scholars because it questioned the insular and heavily doctrinal approach to legal scholarship that was dominant in the United Kingdom at the time. Second, this plenary is an important element of SLSA's internationalization strategy. Continuing to build and sustain international connections, networks, and collaborations is an important aim for the SLSA. Given the greater precarity of connections and links to Europe and the Global South resulting from various global developments in recent years, SLSA's strategy for internationalization is informed by multiple needs. One of them is to support scholars at all levels, but particularly those in their early stages of their career. It's also equally important for this strategy to be informed by the need to support socio-legal scholars from our community to develop, sustain, and widen their own international networks ground up. I want to highlight 2 recent internationalization initiatives through which the SLSA has invested in these 2 goals. In 2023, we commenced a new collaboration with WSR, which is the Dutch and Flemish Law and Society Association. This collaboration took the form of an annual PGR exchange through which PGR members of SLSA and VSR can participate in the respective associations' annual conference and training events that are aimed at early career scholars. In the last 2 newsletters, you can find reports covering our PGR members' experience of this exchange. So if you want to know more, please look at the last 2 SLSA newsletters. In 2023, the SLSA also launched a new international collaboration funding scheme to support SLSA members to undertake collaborative activities that are specifically aimed at building connections with other socio-legal scholars, organizations, or communities that are based outside the UK. Now, this scheme provides seed funding of up to £1,000 that can be used to initiate and build a new connection or strengthen existing relationships that one might have with socio-legal scholars or organizations or communities outside the UK. And this could be to lay the foundation for new collaborative research activity, but it could equally involve capacity building events or activities. Now, this scheme is being funded through a combination of SLSA's own resources, but also a new donation that we've received from the Social and Legal Studies Board to the SLSA. In the coming year or years, we hope to continue with these initiatives. And if any of you are interested in the PGR exchange, or if you're looking for some funding to set up your own international collaborative activities, then please look out for announcements about these schemes in forthcoming e-bulletins from SLSA and also information in the newsletters. The third point that I want to make is that the SLSA is very grateful to CARA for working with us for this plenary, including identifying 3 of their current fellows who are participating in this plenary. So now let me introduce you to our panel. We have Stephen Wordsworth, the director of CARA, who will give us an overview of CARA, including its aims and activities. Now, followed by this overview, we have our 3 Kara Fellows, Irina Priphan, based at the University of Sheffield Hallam, Amanullah Ahmadzai, based at the University of Edinburgh, and Abdul Sabur, based at the University of Central Lancashire. They will speak about their own experiences, intellectual, professional, and others, in relation to moving to the UK, their work in the context of socio-legal studies, their own scholarship, or scholarship broadly in their own areas of origin or in a global context. Each of our speakers will have a maximum of 10 minutes, and this will hopefully give us 15 minutes or so for Q&A at the end. And then I will stop being a barrier between you and the conference dinner. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to our first speaker, Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Smita. Just move that on. Hey, it worked. Good. Right. Yes, when we heard this was happening, we're very happy to help with contacts and so on. I'm very pleased that some of our fellows are here today to talk about their experiences. They're already making important contributions in their fields, and they'll tell you all about that. But as we describe them as Kara Fellows, it seems sensible to just take a few minutes to explain what that actually means and indeed what Kara is, for those of you who don't know already. And there are certain overlaps with the history, particularly of the modern legal review. 1933, that's the starting date. The gentleman on the left, William Beveridge, later Lord Beveridge, at the time was the director of the London School of Economics. And he was in Vienna when he started to hear from people there what was happening in Germany, where the Nazis had just come to power and passed a law, which I'm sure many of you will know about already as legal scholars, which is the law on the restoration of the professional civil service, which sounds quite innocuous. Actually, it was anything but innocuous. The whole purpose was to ban non-Aryans, specifically Jews, from the public service in Germany, which included, in the German system, universities and school teachers. So a lot of university academics were suddenly threatened with being pushed out of their jobs, including a lot of people whom Beveridge himself, as an academic, whom he knew personally. And so he came back to the UK, and within about 2 months, got together a group of 41 leading academics, vice-chancellors, heads of Oxbridge colleges, president of the Royal Society, president of the British Academy, all sorts of other folk, to set up what they called the Academic Assistance Council, the purpose of which was to raise funds to support those who were being pushed out, to help support them, to help them to find new positions either in the UK or to travel through the UK to some other safe place. And he defined the mission, or they defined the mission in the founding statement, as the relief of suffering and the defense of learning and science. And that is still very much what Kara is focused on today. We have 2 programs. The relevant one for this discussion really is the fellowship program, which is the continuation of the rescue mission from 1933. We work with people who contact us from wherever they are. They are at risk, and we define risk quite broadly, and they need help to get away and to a safe place where they and their families, if they have them, can be safe, and where they can carry on their academic studies. We also run regional programs for people who can't necessarily get to the UK, but can work in the area around their own countries. Currently, we have a program for Syrian academics based in Turkey, which is where the largest single concentration of exiled Syrian academics is. But sticking with the fellowship program, it's, as I say, the modern version of the old rescue mission. We have developed in the recent years a network of 135 UK universities and research institutes who support us. The basic commitment from them is that they will work with us to support at-risk academics. Mostly now they are hosting one or more of our Kara Fellows. Our initial request of our university partners in all these situations is, when we discuss a case, are you able to essentially take this person in with the family? Can you support them? Can you fund them? And of course, it depends on the university. In some cases, they're able to do that, and some universities are hosting 4, 5, 6 or more of our Kara Fellows. But we know that times are, to put it mildly, tough for universities. Not every university can afford to do that, or they can't necessarily support a large family. So we will often contribute ourselves to the cost. So we put a package together. It takes a little time, but ideally we do like the host, if possible, to cover all the costs, because we have to raise funds ourselves, and we have to spread them as widely as we can. We define people at immediate risk. It covers everything from those who are caught up in conflict, and who might be sort of trying to get from where they live to the university, and suddenly there are checkpoints and all sorts of threats on the route they used to take every day, It can be people who have written or said something that makes them very unpopular. People who've, for example, from Bangladesh, we have people who've written something which somebody else decided was blasphemous, and they're threatened with murder and need to get out in a hurry. It can be other things, a threat of prison, or have something they've said or written, or just being banned from academic work. Or it can be something very personal, sexual orientation, gender identity, where those sort of things can also get you threatened or beaten up or even killed. So it's a very broad definition of risk. But our aim is always that people come out are supported while they're here, they make their contribution, they share the skills they bring with them, which is really important. But ultimately, ideally, when it is safe, they will go back home again, because we don't want to be in the brain drain business. It's very important that people are needed back in their own countries, but they have to be safe. Currently, end of last February, just gone, we had 190 active fellows, as we call them, that is those who are actually here in placements. This has gone up enormously in recent couple of years. Sadly, our world has got a lot busier. We were already quite busy with the Middle East and particularly Syria and then Yemen, when, of course, in quick succession we had Afghanistan, Ukraine, Sudan, which is the one that doesn't get much attention but is equally serious. And now we're looking at Gaza and what that might mean at some point. But the figure there of 190, if you go at the beginning of last year, that was 115. So there's been that growth in the course of 1 year. And that's just part of it because we have, it's a process. We have the inquiries team dealing with the first applications. We have the new fellows team, which is really trying to work out with them where they want to go and what they want to do when they get there. And then once they arrive, it's the active fellows team. So you can double that number in terms of people who are in the system, if you like, working with us, being helped towards their first placement. Just for some few statistics, currently 18 different countries, and we are open to anybody from anywhere. It just happens that we happen to have 18 at the moment. As you would expect, Afghanistan, Ukraine, and Syria are the largest. Recently, applications from Sudan actually outnumbered those from Afghanistan, so there's a lot coming in from there. Over 40 Afghan fellows there currently in placements, 40 Ukrainians, 14 Russians. A lot of Russians are not happy with what's going on at all and trying to get out. Gaza, West Bank, it's really a big question. We had a lot of people applying to us from there. Of course, just applying is difficult, and we get people who are contacting us, and they say, well, to contact you, to get a signal, I have to go out into an open space on high ground. That's not a good idea. We say, don't do more than you absolutely have to, and don't put yourselves at risk. We did lose one of our alumni who went back to Gaza just at the wrong time, shortly before the beginning of October, and he was killed, unfortunately, in that. We're also involved in other programs, several different of them, but I just name the one, which is the one for Ukraine, which is the Researchers at Risk program, run by or led by the British Academy, has UK government funding, and the money essentially goes from DSIT, as it is now, to the British Academy, and then on to us. We were on the selection panel. We administer all the payments and do that side of things for the fellows. And because we're a charity, it's taken as a charitable grant and charitable payments. There's no tax involvement. So it's all very straightforward and keeps it simple. Altogether, if you look at those in active placements, those with whom we are working to secure them placements, the people on that program, and the people working with us in Turkey as part of our Syria program, it's something over 700 people engaged with us in different ways as a part of our various programs, plus, of course, all the family members. And just digressing slightly for a moment to the Syria program, at the beginning of last year, if you remember, there was the bad earthquakes in southeastern Turkey, which was exactly the area where most of the Syrian emigres are. A lot of people we were working with were badly affected by that. We were able to raise from our university partners and from individual friends and supporters £140,000 in the space of about a month and a half, which we dispersed as immediate payments to people who had nowhere to live, had no access to food, and because they were Syrians in Turkey, didn't know what support they were going to get from the Turkish state. And anyway, the international effort took some time to get organized. So it was immediate support, which is not something we normally do, but in that particular occasion we did. So that's essentially what we do. I'll stop there, and you get on to the stars of the show who are coming next. Thank you.
Good evening, dear colleagues. My name is Irena Prepkhan, and I'm a Ukrainian visiting scholar granted by Kara, and I moved to United Kingdom a few months ago. In Ukraine, I'm an associate professor with more than 15 years of experience in teaching and researching. The full-scale war changed lives of all Ukrainians. As a lawyer and a citizen of Ukraine, I cannot be indifferent to all these processes that are taking place in Ukraine. As a result of a large-scale war in Ukraine, many people become disabled. The authorities, institutions, and organizations in Ukraine have never faced such a large number of people with disabilities before. Prior to the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia, discrimination, exclusion, isolation, and violence were the significant issues violating the rights of persons with disabilities. With the onset of the invasion, inaccessible temporary shelters, lack of access to food, inaccessible information, poor logistic and evacuation issues of minors with disabilities subjoin this list. Ukrainian asylum seekers with disabilities are also at risk of being segregated in residential institutions. During the wartime, there is an increase in the number of persons with disabilities among combatants and the civilian population suffering from shelling and bombing. In addition to physical injury, there is an increased incidence of psychological distress, anxiety, depression, and post-trauma stress. All these people have many specific needs. The main challenges and violations of the rights of the people with disabilities in Ukraine are connected with inaccessibility in multiple areas. First of all, there is a lack of accessibility in shelters for people with limited mobility, modular housing for internally displaced persons is not readily available, and there are barriers in accessing information. Secondly, a lot of Ukrainians cannot access medical care, and this figure is even higher in areas of active combat. Also, we should talk about children with disabilities, which face difficulties in accessing education as distance learning doesn't meet their needs. Parents of children with disabilities who are forced to leave their place of residence have faced difficulties in accessing rehabilitation services. At last, the evacuation of people with disabilities is also a critical issue that requires regulation and standardization not only on the national level. We realize that these people, disabled people, have the right to full participation in society without any discrimination. The government should develop legal bases and legal frameworks that guarantee their rights and protect them from discrimination. It's also important that this right should be not only declared, but actually enforced, and therefore effective legal mechanisms for the realization of such rights should be developed. Summarizing, I need to admit that since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia, there's been a deep humanitarian crisis for Ukrainians with disabilities. However, in accordance with humanitarian law standards, for example, Article 11 of the United Nations Conventions of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, they should have equal access without any discrimination to protection and support in wartime, situations of risk, and humanitarian emergencies. However, both Ukraine and international community were unprepared for this. I won't take up any more of your time, because I should think about my colleagues, and I realize that all participants of this plenary are tired and are waiting for gala dinner and prize giving. In the end, I want to express my gratitude to Great Britain and to the British people for their support of Ukraine and Ukrainians. Thank you a lot. We appreciate you being our friends. And also a big thanks to Council for at-Risk Academics and Social-Legal Studies Association for unique opportunities and support for migrant academics. Many thanks.
Thank you so much. It's so pleased that I'm here in this wonderful session, but in the meantime, it's so sad that something bad happened to us that pushed us to be here. I'm a PhD student and part-time tutor at Edinburgh University Law School. Before beginning my PhD program, I was funded as a research fellow, and I'm a Cara fellow for sure. From the beginning, I was sponsored till now. It has been a year and a half since I left my country and moved to the UK. But before moving to the UK, I was teaching at Kabul University at Faculty of Law and Political Science for almost a decade. Beside teaching, I was involved in some rule of law projects. I was practicing law, and I work with the public administration of Afghanistan. My work with the public administration consists of working with the Ministry of Counter-Narcotics, Department of Law Enforcement, and then I worked for 2 years with the Appeals Board of Independent Administrative Reform in Civil Service Commission. My last job, beside teaching, was with the Ministry of Justice as Hukuk General Director, and then as Justice General Director for Kabul City. Then suddenly, the incident in August 2021 happened, and I had to leave the country. Not only the country, I had to leave the job I loved the most, which was teaching large classes at Kabul University. My job in the Ministry of Justice, which I was hired to a competitive process, and I wanted to use it to bring reform and rule of law through that to the legal and judicial sector of Afghanistan, was handed over to a member of the de facto government that's supposed to be a very big clergyman. My friends, relatives, community, all who were precious and are precious to me were left behind. The only valuable thing I can remember that I brought with myself was my educational qualification documents. And for sure, my identification and travel documents, which has become so difficult than obtaining a university degree after the government collapsed. Luckily, despite all these losses, I wasn't broken. New hopes emerged, and I soon began a new phase of my career in the UK. I was given the opportunity to work on my research and teaching qualifications. I was introduced with new research environment, new research skills and values. I have access to a wealth of academic resources in my field of study and research and teaching. I receive advice, guidance, and mentoring support from senior academics and experienced academics and colleagues who are so kind in my field of research. I experience and explore new teaching style. I recently submitted all my assignments to the PG Cup program, which will also hopefully will lead to the Fellowship of Advanced Higher Education, which was formerly known as Higher Education Academy. I could not believe none of these, and I should acknowledge that none of these support and resources were available to me in my home country. I believe I can stand stronger than in the past, and I can contribute better to my community that I left behind, and I can better plan for my long-term career now. However, it should not be a one-way process. It seems to me more of a mutual benefit for both the migrant scholar in the host institution or the host community and society as a whole. It will certainly take time for these academics, migrant academics, to show in a visible impact in their field of study, research, and teaching. But I believe that their contribution to the host institutions and to their field of research will be significant and important. Migrant academics bring with them a wealth of experience, knowledge from their home country. My current research, which broadly listens to be learned from modern alternative dispute resolution for the jurisdictions with predominant informal justice system, for sure that will be changed later during the project, but for now that's it. That's inspired by my work back in Afghanistan and my broadly interest in teaching and researching commercial law. My work with the Hukuk department in Ministry of Justice was so aligned with my current project and my inspiration for teaching and research. This department was responsible for handling all civil and commercial disputes before the court proceeding starts. And at the end, when the court judgments were issued, this department was responsible for the enforcement of those judgments. And now I am taking over that experience in working towards that for the future recommendations for making things better and lessons gaining from that experience. Coming back to the contribution of migrant contribution of migrant academics, as outsider, they might be in a better position to open up some new aspects of a topic that the local academic might not see it as important or might see it as something left behind in a previous history. They will bring about new angles to the research and teaching, including comparative research, that I shouldn't reiterate the great impact and contribution of that here. They can facilitate, collaborate, and contribute to these comparative studies and research. Overall, I believe that in a globalized world, especially in the field of social legal studies, there is a need of diversity, inclusion, and representation from a range of scholars from different backgrounds and origins. As discussed in the yesterday plenary, this ensures equality but also improves the quality of teaching and researching. And I will wrap up with a short concern about the long visions for these programs. If there is no long vision in a clear plan for the work of these migrant scholars, I'm afraid that these hopes and plans will remain as a dream. And I hope that will not be the case. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Being the last speaker has their own maybe challenges. Everything our colleagues shared very similar to my situation. Just I'm here to look at my situation from maybe different lens, expanding on my colleagues' stories and the way they explain their journey. I'm Abdul Sabur Mateen, visiting scholar at University of Central Lancashire, as very kindly Smita mentioned earlier. I'm member of similar institute at university, Center for Socio-Legal Studies, and recently I received my accreditation in mediation, Center for Mediation at the University of Central Lancashire, which opens new opportunities and pathways toward future plans. And I'm member of Institute for Advanced Studies, Legal Advanced Studies, and all of these because of good opportunities that Cara and just all academics in the UK opens as. Yep. Let's have a look to my background. What led us to this point? We, back in Afghanistan, was a collective members of alumni from Western universities in law, going back to Afghanistan before collapse of our government, trying to bring reforms in our legal fields and our legal system. As my colleague Amanullah mentioned about all that efforts, we created an association called Association for Western Universities Alumni in Law, and we collectively worked to reach some very important goals, and that was very fascinating. And but by 15th of August 2021, our hopes are shattered, and all of us, because of our works, because of our activities and activism, just be subjected to prosecution, and we had no way just leaving our country. And at that time, Cara was the only beacon of hope we received at that time, and hopefully we managed to get out of that situation, and we applied for UK visa from a third country. Then we managed to get in the UK, and this is maybe the start of another phase of new opportunities and everything. And then we be able to work on our dream, hopes and everything. And this is not end of our journey, and still we are stepping forward and hoping we can move and bring some changes in back in our home country by taking advantage of all these resources and facilities. Yeah, let's stay in connection and open maybe discussion. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Smith.
Thank you to all our panelists for sharing their experience and sharing the work of Cara. That's wonderful. We now have some time for Q&A or thoughts and reflections. We have a roving mic like yesterday's plenary, so if you have a question or a comment, please raise your hand and I will ensure a mic reaches you so you can offer your thoughts. Over there. Yep, thank you.
Thank you so much. Irina, Abnullah, and Abdullah, I just want to wish you guys well. And I really hope that your countries find peace. So, I really do. I feel for you, because it must be hard to leave behind the country that you love and your family. And so I really hope that everything works out. And I'm really glad that you found hope through through Cara, because I think this is an amazing initiative. And I heard about this a while ago, and I'm glad to see physical proof of it working. So I really wish you well, and Amanullah, I hope you get your fellowship as well. My question is to Stephen, actually. I just was coming for, but Stephen, my question is, how do you decide, or how does Cara decide how long, and obviously you're applying for a visa. I don't know how long the visas are for, but is there not a problem when they apply for the visa, and let's say they get 2 years, 3 years, but things in their country don't get any better? Have we not damaged their potential asylum claim if they need to apply for one? Is that something that is considered? Because of course, when it comes to asylum, it should be the first thing you apply for when you come to the UK. And I just wonder if that's something you consider. Do you have solicitors who work with Cara, and if they take into consideration whether these applications can cause detriment to a further asylum application later on? Thank you.
Yes, firstly, I should say we define academic very broadly as somebody who has held a teaching or research post at a university, research institute, or equivalent institution. So there's no set level of qualification, if you like. Now, we have for example, two American counterpart organizations who mostly require people to have PhDs. We don't do that. And so, although quite a lot of people who do come out are at the postdoctoral level, in recent years, particularly from first Iraq, then Syria, and then now Afghanistan, it is much more common for people to have maybe a master's degree as their highest formal qualification, and then they get their first job. In Afghanistan, indeed, people often went through quite a lot of their career without doing a PhD. So when they come out into a Western system, then they very often will want to requalify and to get to a PhD. So they're coming for a PhD for 3 or 4 years, and they will come on a regular student visa. The university is the visa sponsor. We are not a visa sponsor ourselves, but we work very closely with that university. Of course, if you breathe the word, refugee, asylum, whatever, that's going to cause a lot of complications. In recent years, we've had, with our university partners, a 100% success rate for visas for the last 3 or 4 years now. We haven't had a refusal, which is tribute to their work, and also we work, as I say, work very closely with the individual as well to make sure they understand how the system works. And there are options, of course, and if you are coming on a student visa, then for as long as we still have the graduate visa route, then after a master's you can work for 2 years, after a PhD you can work for 3. People coming for a postdoctoral level, the standard visa is the catchily named temporary worker government authorized exchange visa, which is 2 years maximum and can't be renewed. But again, there are things that you can look at afterwards. Global talent visa is one. We're getting more people able to transition to global talent visa. Some people find jobs. Small numbers, but it's growing as well, particularly with their specializations, which they really have a unique contribution to offer. So, some very few cases actually do seek asylum, but most don't. The great majority find other options. And we also have connections with the German Philip Schwarz initiative, so some of our fellows have transitioned to that and are now in Germany. Also, some have gone on to other countries where they can pursue their careers there. So we tried, we don't focus on asylum. When they're coming to get a UK visa, they have to be clearly coming for the purpose it says on the application. And for the great majority, that works out. Yeah, and one day, long term, who knows? But some people, as they get jobs and settle, so move on to other countries.
Thank you very much, Stephen. We've got a couple of questions down at the front, so we'll take it in the order I saw them. So over here first, and then the row behind.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I think this is an amazing opportunity for especially academics who are living under dire conditions. And those are especially for scholars who are working in the human rights field and exposing to political pressure as well. My question is, how do you assess the risk? Is there a scheme, and how has it been established?
Yes, as I say, the risk, as I was saying earlier, it can be very broad or very specific and individual. And clearly, if somebody is caught up in the middle of a conflict, like in Sudan now, for example, where people are, if they are still in Khartoum or Omdurman, they're in grave danger just by being there. in many cases, they've been displaced to other parts of the country where they have almost no communication and no chance of really doing very much or getting away, or else they're in Port Sudan and stuck trying to get out. It's a desperate situation. So the risk is pretty self-apparent. The question is really what are they able to do? Similarly with Afghanistan, and when the Taliban took over in August 2021, we received within 3 months over 1,000 applications. But the great majority were from people who just were not able to move. In some cases, they were simply too frightened to go out and about. The sort of messages coming from the Taliban authorities were very hostile to all those who'd been connected with Western institutions, as many academics had been. And so they were very wary of drawing attention to themselves. So the question for us is, yes, you can contact us, but then what can you then do? Now, in some cases, they didn't have passports, or family members didn't have passports, and they were naturally reluctant to go to a Taliban-run office to seek a passport. It began to change over time, that people got a little bit more relaxed, or less frightened, shall we say. Some people did then go to office to get a passport for a child, perhaps. They wanted to travel with them, and it worked. Most, when they do try to leave the country, travel over the land borders, because the airports are a bit more controlled and a bit more surveillance there. We haven't had anybody who's started on the journey who's not made it. Most go through Iran rather than through Pakistan, but that's their choice. But other ways, as I say, it's very much, are they able to move? Do they have documentation for themselves and the family members? What is the degree of risk? What is the priority? If they stay where they are, is it just that they can't work, and well, not just, but is it they can't work? Are they at imminent risk of being murdered? So we try to prioritize, and we accept the risk in most cases. In some cases, you look at it and say, well, I'm just not sure that really applies. And we do define it in terms of, well, it's the same language as the Refugee Convention. It's sort of to do with race, religion, political opinion, and so on. So we do have some people coming to us and say, well, I can't continue working because the climate change in my country has made it impossible to continue to function. And that's not covered by our Articles of Association. And as a charity, we have to work within the articles, which are the legal basis for what we do. That defines how we can take in money and then pay it out again without taxation and that sort of thing. So some things we just can't cover. But on the whole, we have a fairly broad definition. We try to assess the priority and the urgency and then work on that basis. But it depends on people also being able to move. Now, Ukraine was a very different story. Of course, people there, because of the extra visa regimes put in place for Ukrainian citizens, it wasn't uncommon for somebody to contact us first from Kiev or Kharkiv or wherever they were, then suddenly they were in Poland and suddenly they were in London, because they could just do that. And that's very unusual. And of course, for us, that created a new complication where people were arriving before we'd had time to do very much in terms of making the arrangements and finding the host institution and so on. But so it varies enormously from case to case, and depending on where the person's coming from. And on the family. If there's a large family, that's another layer of complexity.
Thank you. Over just the row behind.
Thank you very much for sharing with us your experience. And I'm working at York Law School, and we have Center for Applied Human Rights, and we have a scheme for human rights defenders at risk. And listening about the experience of Cara, I was wondering the way you select the people who participate in the program. I mean, the way people is nominated, do they apply directly, or do you have some partners who nominate people, and how is the internal process of selecting the participants in the fellowship?
The individuals come to us directly. They contact us from wherever they are, usually their home country. Sometimes they've made it to a neighboring country where they feel a bit safer and contact us from there. And then it's the process, which is really the job of our inquiries team, to get all the information we can. The application process is entirely online. On the website, there's a button that will get help, get support, and that takes people into the process. There's a whole series of things, of questions, and the chance to attach certificates and copies and so on, so we know essentially what qualifications people have. We always require academic referees, so we can actually check what they're telling us. Now, you know, it depends on the situation, what they can actually do, but we would normally need at least 2, preferably 3 references that we can check. Again, it's as quickly as we can, because obviously it's urgent, but we have to know what the person has done, what level they're at. We will talk to them to assess the level of English language, because if they're going to study in the UK, then clearly they need a degree of English ability to be able to do that. And if it's coming to do a PhD, for example, then there are set levels they have to achieve in terms of the grade of English they have to have. And then we always work with them to identify the potential host university. It's not for us to say, you should go to this university or that university. In some cases, people know already what they want to do. They may have, at an early stage of their careers, have studied in the UK, have kept connection with that university. So they will say, I want to go to this university and work with Professor so-and-so. In other cases, they have absolutely no idea. They didn't expect this to happen to them. Suddenly, they're having to leave, go to a country they know almost nothing about. And so we have to work with them to sort of find out what would work. And then, using our own knowledge of our own network, what sort of placement would look best for them in their situation, which again will depend on things like family size as well, and which affects the cost. We wouldn't ideally have a large family in central London, for example, because it just breaks the bank in terms of, unless the university can cover the whole cost. If they can, that's fine, but otherwise it gets very expensive. So it's a whole range of things to help so people identify what they want to do and where. But it's always that they will come to us. We don't sort of... Now, if you look, for example, at the British Academy scheme, which I said we're involved with for Ukrainians, which is based loosely on the German Philipp Schwarz initiative. That's quite a different system. There, it's the university who identifies the candidates, and they then put that candidate forward to the selection panel for a decision. But that's not the way that we, as CARA, work.
Thank you. We've got another question, just a couple of rows up over there.
Thank you very much. And we really enjoyed the presentations by the academics and researchers. I just had a question again to Stephen, but I also want to give the opportunity to the other panelists.
Yep.
I think, Stephen, you mentioned you have roughly 130 partners. I can't remember the exact number of
135, yes.
Yep. And I haven't checked the list, and I don't know whether my home institution is part of this initiative, but a question, I think, to all of you. How could we encourage our home institution to be affiliated and work with CARA? Because I think the work you're doing is fundamentally important. And, as a migrant scholar, as I said, I haven't been at risk, but I can see, and I think that was Amanullah who mentioned, it's not only about, bringing people who are in danger to the UK, but it's a really enriching experience for UK institutions in terms of having diversity in academia as well. So what are your thoughts on, bringing more universities, more partners on board?
Well, with 135 currently, which is, we did call it originally the Universities Network, and then a couple of years ago, the Wellcome Sanger Institute wanted to get involved as well, and another research institute. So we had to broaden it out and now call it University and Research Network. But with 133, I think, universities out of the 135, which is obviously the great majority of universities here in the UK. We do have 2 more in the pipeline who we're talking to now. To their credit, they don't want to just join to become a member, they want to join and actually do something. But right now, given the financial situation, they're having to assess what they can actually do and what they can bring to the table, which is fine, and as and when they're ready, we'll go forward with that. Which university is yours? Can I?
Goldsmiths University.
Yes, yeah, Goldsmiths is one of our partners, yeah. They're supporting, I think, a couple of PhD fellows currently. I have to check, but I think that's what... And so some universities prefer to take people for PhDs, some prefer postdocs. It depends on their own structures and what they think they can do best. But yeah, Goldsmiths a couple of years ago offered places for PhD students. So yeah, and there are, and on our website, which is cara.ngo, it's very easy to remember and to find, there's a list there of all our partner universities. So you can easily check. And it also lists who is our contact point at that university. So you can easily check and see if you want to talk to somebody about what your university is doing, then that person should be able to tell you.
Thank you, Stephen. Do any of the fellows have any thoughts on what more could universities do, or what more would you like to see in response to the question that have come from the floor? Okay, Amanullah.
Thank you so much. I think this sort of discussions will also help. I wouldn't say awareness, but there has to be some discussions around the issue to alert these institutions of their moral obligations. I wouldn't say legal obligations, because that gives you a sense of belonging. If we don't know where, in which place, in which institutions, a bad incident will happen that will force the academics from that institution to then immigrate. Those discussions are important to make these institutions alert about the importance, existence, and possibility of such networks with these organizations. I don't know how many organizations are doing the similar job, but there are a handful of them, not too much. Before there was, in a question mentioned, there are a lot of schemes for supporting human rights defenders, which is a good thing and important. But there are rarely, you can find programs that are only for academics. Even some might suspect that whether academics would be at risk or not. But they are the people in their society who can wake up people, who can just change the thoughts, change and say something against the dictatorship regime, or whether if that's democratic regime, maybe against the policy of the government. That's important to be done. And for sure, besides what the CARA is doing, there might be some limitations of funding and maybe their strategy and policy, what they can do in terms of short-term support. But for the long-term, institutions like SLSAs, I think, has a stronger voice for advocating and for making sure that these academics find their career in the long term after the end of the visa in the scheme that you're coming here. That's not only about their immigration, but also the investment that has been done on them will be gone if there is no long-term policy and strategy for their long-term settlement in academia, I would say. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other thoughts or any other questions from the floor so I can mark it? Okay, one. Anyone else? If you raise your hand so I know how much time we have. I think I'm only seeing the one, so we'll go back to our first, the person who asked the question first.
It's not a question, sorry. I've just had a look, Stephen, on the CARA website on the 135 universities, and my university is on there, but it's got vacant next to it. What does that mean? And is there anything that I can do to bring that, like, can I go and advocate for CARA to my university, make sure we've got that? Should we all be doing that, basically? I'm asking, I guess.
Yeah, but by all means. Which university are you from?
Birmingham City University is where I work.
Okay, well, Birmingham City, I'd have to check on that. What happens sometimes is that we normally ask the senior leadership of the university, director, vice chancellor, whatever, to nominate somebody to be our contact. And it's their choice. But from our point of view, the ideal is somebody who is in a position where they can get a decision quickly. So if you go to them and say, we have this person we think would be a good match for your university, could you consider taking them in? We don't want to wait 3 months for an answer because the person is in a difficult situation. We have to move quickly. Now, what sometimes happens is that they nominate, and this may or may not be true of Birmingham City, I don't know, but they will nominate somebody who then makes a career move and goes on somebody else.
That's what's happened, yeah.
And they forget to tell us. And then we find out they've gone. So, okay, the email bounces back, oh, bother. And then we have to start the process again of asking the university, can you nominate somebody, please, to be our contact? And I can't say offhand, I'd have to check, but that may be where we are with Birmingham City.
I can go and speak to him because he's actually quite, he just started not that long ago, and we're working together on issues of like bringing BAME students, not that's not what we're using anymore, Global South, global majority students to as PGR students. So he wants to do, and I think he would be supportive of something like this. So I think I will. He is very approachable, so I will speak to him.
Okay, and one I should say is that we do ask our university partners to consider paying an annual voluntary subscription to help fund our running costs. Birmingham City have just paid theirs, so they're doing well.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks, Stephen, for doing the heavy lifting in terms of addressing the questions. Thank you all very much for being here and engaging. And this is such an important topic, and I want to finish off in the vein of what Amanullah said, that many of us are also migrant scholars. We came here not while not being at risk, but we are enriched by being here, but we also enrich the field that we work in, including socio-legal studies. And I think this exchange is what is really important, both for migrant scholars who are here because of circumstances that are difficult, but also otherwise. And I'm really glad that we got a chance to discuss this today. Thank you all very much. Thanks again. Please a round of applause for all our panelists. And you can all head to dinner now.